You think knights were slow, weighed down by steel, stumbling across muddy battlefields like walking tanks. That's the picture movies have painted. Massive men locked in endless duels, swinging clumsy swords until one finally drops. But here's the truth. If you stood across from a real knight in armor, you'd be dead before you even understood how fast he moved. A full suit of plate wasn't a prison of steel. It was an athletic exoskeleton, balanced and engineered to give protection without stealing agility. Knights could sprint, wrestle, and even vault onto horses while wearing it. Their movements weren't sluggish, they were explosive. And when it came to fighting, they didn't waste energy on long, dramatic exchanges. Every strike was designed to end the duel quickly, a precise thrust through a weak spot, a crushing blow from a mace, a grapple that ended in seconds. This is the myth versus the reality. Hollywood has shown you the clumsy giant. History reveals something far more terrifying. An elite warrior, conditioned from childhood to kill with speed, precision, and ruthless efficiency. And once you see how they actually fought in armor, you'll never look at a knight the same way again. For centuries, storytellers and filmmakers have sold us the same image. Knights as lumbering giants trapped inside their steel cages. In movies, they shuffle across the battlefield, swords dragging, movements stiff, as if every step is a struggle. Their duels are shown as slow, theatrical exchanges, two armored titans hammering away until exhaustion finally decides the winner. It's a powerful image, but it's also one of the greatest lies in history. The myth comes from a misunderstanding of armor itself. People assume because it was made of steel, it must have been unbearably heavy. They imagine suits weighing over 100 pounds, crushing the man inside, reducing him to a clunky spectacle. Hollywood leans into this, staging endless sword-on-sword clashes where sparks fly but little else happens, reinforcing the belief that armor made knights half useless in combat. The reality couldn't be further from that image. A full suit of plate armor averaged 40 to 60 pounds, less than the gear modern soldiers carry into battle today. And unlike a modern backpack, that weight was perfectly distributed across the body. Knights trained in it daily, learning not only to fight, but to run, climb, wrestle, and even mount horses with ease. Far from being clumsy, they were agile predators. Even the duels we picture, long back-and-forth sword fights, are myths. Knights didn't waste time trading dozens of blows. They used techniques designed to exploit weak points. Half-swording, grappling, slamming opponents to the ground, and finishing the fight with a dagger through a visor or an armpit gap. What looks to us like awkward wrestling was, in truth, a brutally efficient way of killing. The myth of the clumsy knight comforts us. It makes these warriors seem less frightening, easier to dismiss as relics of a primitive age. But strip away the fiction, and what remains is unsettling. Men in steel who could move with shocking speed and fight with lethal precision. To understand how knights truly fought, you first have to understand the genius of their armor. Plate armor wasn't a clunky metal prison. It was a marvel of engineering, designed to turn men into living fortresses without stripping away speed or mobility. And when you break down its construction, the myth of the slow, stumbling knight collapses instantly. A full suit of plate armor typically weighed between 40 and 60 pounds. Compare that to a modern soldier's gear, which can weigh 70 to 90 pounds, and suddenly it doesn't seem so impossible. But here's the crucial difference. While a soldier carries most of that weight on his shoulders and back, armor distributed it evenly across the entire body. This balance meant a knight could run, roll, and maneuver far more fluidly than most people imagine. The joints of the armor were articulated, allowing a wide range of motion. Clever overlapping plates meant protection without stiffness. Knights could bend at the waist, raise their arms above their heads, and even perform acrobatics in full gear. Period accounts and modern experiments confirm that knights could climb ladders, vault onto horses, and wrestle effectively without their armor slowing them down. This engineering changed the very nature of combat. Instead of wide, sweeping sword clashes, knights often fought in close quarters, using specialized techniques. One of the most misunderstood was half-swording, where a knight gripped his sword blade with one hand to use it like a spear, driving its point into gaps of armor. Far from awkward, it was a precise and devastating method of ending fights quickly. Other weapons came into play as well. Poleaxes, maces, and warhammers were perfectly suited for armored combat, capable of denting steel, breaking bones, or knocking opponents off balance. Armor wasn't invulnerable. It bought time, but only seconds, against a determined opponent. That's why grappling became so important. Knights were trained wrestlers. They slammed into each other, locked arms, and tried to throw their enemy to the ground. Once there, a short dagger, called a rondelle dagger, was driven into an exposed gap. Brutal, efficient, final. Training made this second nature. Knights practiced in their armor regularly, conditioning their bodies to carry the weight as if it were part of them. This wasn't occasional exercise, it was daily life. They rode, trained, and fought with their gear until hesitation disappeared. To them, the armor wasn't a burden, but an extension of their strength. So when you picture a knight in armor, don't think of a stumbling giant barely able to move. Picture an athlete, disciplined, conditioned, and deadly, encased in steel designed for war. The science of armor didn't slow knights down. It made them unstoppable. History gives us more than theory. It gives us vivid accounts of how knights actually fought in armor. These case studies, drawn from chronicles, trial records, and combat manuals, strip away the Hollywood illusion and reveal the shocking brutality of armored combat. One of the most famous duels took place in 1386 between Jean de Carouge and Jacques Le Gris in France. This wasn't sport. It was a judicial duel fought to settle an accusation of rape. Both men entered the field in full plate, armed with lances, swords, and daggers. The fight was vicious and short. After charges with lances and savage blows, with axes, Carouges forced Le Gris to the ground and drove a dagger through his throat. The crowd saw justice in seconds, not the long spectacle movies promise. This case alone shows how armor enabled endurance and survival. But once a fighter was pinned, the end was brutally decisive. German fight books, like the manuals of Hans Talhofer, reveal even more. These were practical guides for knights training in armored duels. The illustrations show knights gripping swords halfway up the blade for half-swording, turning them into spears for precision thrusts. They also show throws, leg sweeps, and ground fighting, combat that looks more like wrestling in steel than elegant fencing. Victory didn't come from endless sword clashes, but from grappling an opponent, pinning him, and stabbing into a weak spot with a rondelle dagger. On the battlefield, knights weren't just dueling, they were part of a chaotic storm. At the Battle of Visby in 1361, mass graves reveal shattered bones and crushed skulls beneath fragments of armor. This wasn't cinematic swordplay, it was carnage. Maces and warhammers caved in helmets, poleaxes split open armor, and bodies piled in the mud. Armor saved lives, but against relentless strikes, even steel folded. Tournaments tell a different but equally brutal story. While we often imagine them as pageantry, even so-called friendly bouts left knights dead or crippled. Jousting. Lances shattered on impact, sending splinters through armor and into flesh. In melees, armored knights slammed into each other with the same techniques they used in war. A tournament could be entertainment, but it could also become a bloodbath, in moments. Even more revealing are the oddities of trial by combat among commoners. Records from German law codes describe men fighting waist-deep in pits, armed with clubs or stones, while women fought with rocks in cloth slings. Armor wasn't always present, but the mindset of efficiency and brutality was the same. There was no honor in dragging fights out. Every duel was about ending life as quickly as possible. All of these accounts show the same truth. Knights in armor were not clumsy giants trading sparks for minutes on end. They were trained killers who combined steel engineering with wrestling, leverage, and ruthless efficiency. Armor didn't slow them. It gave them the confidence to attack, grapple, and finish their enemy without fear. So when we study these duels and battles, the pattern is clear. Speed, precision, and finality defined the way knights fought. Armor wasn't a handicap. It was the reason they could kill so quickly. What made a knight in armor so terrifying wasn't just the steel or the weapons. It was the mindset forged through years of training and a culture steeped in war. From the moment a noble boy could walk, he was conditioned to see combat as his destiny. Sword drills, wrestling, horseback training, and endless hours in armor built not only muscle, but a hardened psychology. By the time he reached manhood, the knight wasn't just prepared to fight, he expected to. This psychological conditioning created a fighter who viewed armor not as a burden, but as second skin. To him, carrying 60 pounds of steel felt natural. Where a modern athlete might panic under the suffocating weight, the knight thrived. He trusted his gear to protect him, and that confidence allowed him to fight with a calm precision that unnerved opponents. Fear was another dividing line. Knights were raised in a culture where honor, loyalty, and survival were inseparable. Death in battle wasn't just accepted, it was glorified. This stripped away hesitation, the one weakness that destroys most fighters. A knight stepped into combat with total commitment, knowing his life belonged to his lord, his faith, or his cause. Against that mentality, hesitation was fatal. Untrained fighters or desperate peasants often broke mentally before the fight even began. But knights? They carried centuries of warrior tradition in their blood. That psychological edge, the belief that they could endure, fight, and kill in armor, was as lethal as the steel they wore. So now, the myth lies shattered. Knights in armor were not sluggish giants weighed down by steel. They were elite warriors, agile and lethal, who trained their entire lives to fight with precision and ferocity. Their armor wasn't a cage, it was a weapon in itself, giving them the confidence to grapple, strike, and kill without hesitation. The truth is simple. If you imagine yourself facing a knight, thinking you could outlast him because of modern fitness or martial arts training, you're already defeated. The moment you hesitated under the weight, the moment you paused to adjust, he would have closed the gap, wrestled you to the ground, and ended the fight in seconds. That was the brutal efficiency of armored combat. Hollywood gave us myths because myths are easier to believe. But history shows us warriors who defied our assumptions, men who turned 60 pounds of steel into an extension of their bodies, who embraced death as easily as life. So ask yourself this: could you last even 30 seconds against a knight trained from birth to kill in armor? Or would you crumble instantly under the weight of reality? The debate is open. Let's hear your verdict.